Just imagine for a second you are back in the summer of 1993. You are a casting director working for a media company called Saban Entertainment, recruiting teenage actors for a mysterious children's show called Power Rangers, Saban's latest foray into adapting Japanese shows for a Western audience. You have 500 applicants to process, and so far it feels like just another day at the audition. You tiredly gulp down your Zima before calling for your next applicant. A young 5'5" Vietnamese woman runs into the room screaming, leaps onto your audition table before executing a perfect fly-in spin kick off of it, then calmly reads her lines before timidly exiting the hall. You look around to your 19 other executives to discover their jaws are displaced in awe. This was the day that you found your Yellow Ranger, Trini Kwan, as portrayed by the beautiful and fearless Thuy Trang. For 90s kids like myself, Power Rangers was this new obsession. This way that we could vicariously beat the living crap out of the things that scared us or bullied us, through our favourite Rangers, giving us heroes to root for every week, and inner strength to survive an often hostile childhood. At least this was the case for me. And just like every Power Ranger fanatic in the mid-90s, I had a favourite Ranger. A Ranger that had all the strength I wish I had, the conviction I shared. The warm, kind-hearted heroine, full of radiance and beauty, who I would develop one of my earliest TV crushes on. It's Trini Kwan, the Yellow Ranger. Behind her shy, reserved mannerisms lied a fearless warrior who would never back down to help her friends. As early as episode 2, High Five, she displays her unwavering commitment to friendship when she faces her fear of heights, a fear that I shared with her as a child, to protect her fellow Blue Ranger, Billy. Trini would always try to see the best in people, even her enemies. Some would call it naivety, but with a heart the size of hers, and fists equally as strong, she could afford her chirpy optimism and face those who would deceive her, as she does in the 48th episode, Plague of the Mantis. Trini was played by Thuy Trang, whose life outside of Power Rangers made her as tough and fiercely protective of those she loved as the character that she played. Born in Saigon, South Vietnam during 1973, Trang and her family had to face conflict and uncertainty on a daily basis. At just 2 years old, Thuy's father was forced to flee the country, leaving his family behind. He was a soldier in the Army of the Republic of Vietnam and was defending Saigon from the Viet Cong and the Northern Communist Army. After a particularly heavy battle, he decided to return home to escape with his family, but the route home was blocked by enemy forces. So, fearing for his life, he fled Vietnam and was given political asylum in the US. He vowed to gain citizenship for the rest of his family. This would have a massively upsetting impact on anyone, but a 2-year-old girl during the fall of Saigon trying to understand why her father hadn't come home? This no doubt stuck with her for the rest of her life. Later that year, Thuy, her mother and her siblings fled Saigon.
My father was in the Southern Army, so right after the fall of Saigon he left and he came here in 1975, and my family, my mother and my siblings, we didn't come over until 1980.
In 1979, at the age of 6, Thuy and her family secretly boarded a cargo ship en route to Hong Kong, along with 100 or so other persecuted South Vietnamese refugees, with the goal of reaching the US. It was a huge risk during desperate times. They could not remain in their homeland without constant threat and disruption to their lives, but boarding the ship and braving the 8-month journey tightly packed in with dozens of other families with a severe lack of adequate food and water, would be a kind of hell that only a small amount of refugees ever live to describe.
What kind of journey did you have?
It was a very, very tough journey, actually. We were on the boat for like 8 or 9 months. A few people died, like about 4 people died. There was like about 3,000 people on that ship.
1,000?
Yeah, and so it was packed like sardine. You know, there was no space and there was no food, there was no water. And for days I didn't eat, and everybody thought I was dead, and they wanted to throw me overboard.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I shouldn't be laughing, right?
I was gonna say, that's not funny.
I
Well,
know.
lucky for us, they didn't throw you over.
Yeah, my mom was the one that fought and said, no, that's my daughter, you can't throw her overboard. Yeah, and she literally just like put food down my throat, and that's how I stayed alive. And I came here.
At least 4 people are known to have died during the trip, 6-year-old Thuy almost being the 5th. She and the other refugees would go days without eating, and at some points Trang's mother had to force-feed her unconscious children to keep them alive. At times the other refugees would mistakenly assume Thuy had died, and even once tried to persuade her mother to throw her overboard to free up room for the others. Trang's mother thankfully did not do so. Once again, I must reiterate the level of hardship that Thuy had already survived through all in just the first 6 years of her life. Although this is certainly not the ideal childhood, to put it lightly, this is what made Thuy one of the strongest women that I'll ever know. Upon reaching Hong Kong, Thuy and her family were held at a detention camp. After Thuy's father was contacted, he intensified his efforts to gain US asylum for them so that they could join him. After about a year in this camp, they were finally granted entry to the US, bringing the entire family back together after 5 long and painful years. They would settle in California. Finally able to enjoy what remained of her childhood, Thuy began learning English and studied Shaolin Kung Fu, eventually receiving her black belt.
I study Kung Fu with Shaolin. It's really good because it builds a lot of character, and it makes me stronger as a person, especially going through all the stuff that I went through coming over here to America. It just teaches me a lot about, you know, who I am and what I am, and about respect, discipline, and patience, and perseverance, and endurance, and all that.
Thuy graduated from Banning High School in the late 80s and enrolled at the University of California to study civil engineering, a career that she was at the time aspiring for. This was until 1992, when a chance encounter with a talent scout sparked her interest in acting. After a few small roles in advertisements, promos, etc., Thuy was given her breakout role as Trini Kwan, the yellow Mighty Morphin Ranger.
My agent in Hollywood sent me out on the audition, and it was like about 500 people were there for the part of Trini. I don't know if they knew what they wanted, but there was like Caucasian girls, black girls, and Asian girls, and it just, you know, by process of elimination, it came down to like 10 girls, and then 5 girls, and then 3 girls, and then I was lucky enough to get the part.
She threw herself into the role the same way that she threw herself at life, without compromise and dedicating herself completely to her character, who was rewritten to share the real-life Thuy's general badass nature. She immediately gelled in with her fellow Ranger co-stars, Austin St. John playing the Red Ranger Jason, David Yost playing the Blue Ranger Billy, Walter Jones playing the Black Ranger Zach, Amy Jo Johnson playing the Pink Ranger Kimberly, and later Jason David Frank playing the Green Ranger Tommy. Of all the Rangers, Thuy would be the one most frequently to injure herself on set, but true to Thuy, she would be right there ready for work the next day with a big smile on her face. Thuy described her character Trini as quick hands and a peaceful soul, and felt that Trini was an inspiring character for Asian American teens, who up until then hadn't had much representation that was positive. She said, and I quote, "Asians are not portrayed in the media very well, and there aren't many roles on TV for Asians outside the usual stereotypes, gangsters, hookers, and things like that. A lot of older Asian people have approached me and said that I'm doing a huge service for the Asian community." After 80 episodes, the entire first season and the first half of the second, Trang decided to leave Power Rangers due to Saban not paying a fair amount compared to how successful and profitable the show was.
Each
It's the Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, Teenage Defenders of Earth. The Power Rangers are driven by the power of the ancient dinosaurs. Lately, evil space aliens have become a real safety hazard. Earth's only hope, the Power Rangers.
Oh, yeah?
No one can stop us.
Just let them try.
Mighty Morphin Power Rangers, too hot to handle.
Mighty Morphin Power Rangers was bringing in millions in merchandise and viewing figures, yet the actors were being given non-union pay of about $60,000 a year. She was joined by Red Ranger Austin St. John and Black Ranger Walter Jones in requesting more compensation and union recognition, which Saban refused, resulting in half of the original Power Rangers cast to walk from the show. Amy Jo Johnson, who played the Pink Ranger, later admitted that she felt regret for not standing with her fellow Rangers during the pay dispute, saying that if she and the others had stood together, Saban may have been more pressured to make a new deal. Saban had some very big boots to fill when Thuy, Austin and Walter left, and the power transfer filled me with a huge sense of loss as a kid. I remember completely losing interest in the show and not rediscovering and falling in love with it all over again up until about 2001, during the 9th season Time Force. I am a huge fan of Power Rangers to this day, and not just Saban era, but also most of the Disney seasons and a few of the Neon Saban outings. But MMPR Season 1 will always be the one I hold most dear because of what it meant to me growing up, and how it still lets me relive those years every time I rewatch it. If that makes me a casual fan, then so be it. I don't care for fandom elites anyway. I'm just a PR fan who took a while to get over losing my favourite Ranger. Thuy was set for a very promising career after her exit from Power Rangers. She had starred as a female villain in the sequel to The Crow, showing her versatility as an actress in being able to handle more roles than just a hero, and was already cast for so many other roles in films that would have enjoyed moderate success had they been made. However, as a cruel twist of fate, on September the 3rd, 2001, Thuy was involved in a horrible car crash that would claim her life. She was only 27 years old. I prefer not to dwell on Thuy's untimely death, but instead make the focus of this video about her resilience in life and the self-confidence that she carried and inspired in others, like myself. She now rests at Rose Hills Memorial Park in California.
I've ever met, one of the most fearless people I've ever met. She's just so full of life, and I'm just going to miss her a lot.
The 27-year-old actress died in a car accident near San Francisco during the Labor Day weekend. One former Power Ranger says Thuy's own life is the stuff movies are made of.
She came over as a refugee from Vietnam, escaping from the Vietnam War. Her family came over on a boat. Just things that we couldn't even fathom, and then they had to come here and learn a whole new language and just integrate themselves into America.
And after graduating with a degree as a civil engineer, Thuy followed her own American dream to become an actress, an inspirational story that ended too soon. In Westminster, Lisa Breckenridge, Fox 11 News.
To all the people out there, just live out your dreams. If you dream something, just pursue it and do it, because if you put your mind to it, you can do basically anything and everything you want to. I mean, look at me. I mean, I came from a country that was falling apart because of communism, and escaping to America, not knowing the language, and then learning it from beginning, and overcoming that, and where I am now, it just shows you that if you put your mind to it, you can do anything you want to.